One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, one, two. Okay, so first of all, I want to welcome you all. I think that none of you are sharing a single country, but that doesn't matter. And what I'm going to do now is give a presentation about my experience as a healer and how I became a healer, which should run about an hour. Um, and then maybe we'll have time for some questions and answer, and maybe we'll have time also for a short meditation at the end. So first of all, my name is Paul Scorpin, and I'm sitting here in my seminar room in southern Germany in Starnberg. Uh, and this is where I teach healing, and this is also where I give treatments here. Um, and I've been healing going on now about 28 years, 29 years. And the reason why I've been healing is because I had the very, very good fortune of being able to study with one of the greatest healers and mystics of our time. His name, he was known as Dasklos, which is a Greek word for teacher or guru, and his given name was Stylianos Ateshlis. He became quite well known in the 80s and 90s because my university professor, Kyriakos Markides, also a Cypriot, started writing a series of books, which are spiritual classics now in the meantime, including the Magus Astrovolos, which was the first one, Homage to the Sun, and Fire in the Heart. And this is a trilogy which I think is still very much worth reading. Books that came afterwards are not so important, but that's for another reason, which we don't have to go into. But these three books are really classics. And because of Markides, because I was studying at the University of Maine in Orono in the United States, he lit a fire in me to go into something which led me to Kathmandu to study shamanism, um, and then to study Buddhism and Hinduism. And in retrospect, I know that the 2 years I spent there was a necessary preparation for me to actually experience probably one of the greatest healers of recent time and also one of the greatest mystics of recent time. Um, he did a great favor to Christianity and to us all because he showed us that Christianity was a complete path to enlightenment. And I got there in 1989 and was invited to stay for 1 year, but 1 year turned into 2 years, and 2 years turned into 6 years. And then of June of 1994, Dasklos was, now I use my words very carefully, was visited by a stroke in the left hemisphere of the brain, which incapacitated him, leaving him paralyzed on his right side of his body and also speechless for 14 months. And I sat by his bed most of the nights uh, to be with him. I had the night shift, and actually, Dasklos urged me before the stroke. He urged me to come and help him heal, which I always declined, deferred. I just said, Dasklos, I don't understand healing because back then I was very mental. I'm not that mental anymore, but I was very much an intellectual or a pseudo-intellectual, and I really didn't understand healing. But as Douglas laid paralyzed in bed, apparently with pain in his hemisphere, he actually became my first client. I laid my hand on his head. After his urging for 6 years to lay my hands on somebody, it ended up being my teacher and my friend, Douglas. And then I relocated to Munich, Germany, about a year later to be with my future wife. And because Dasklos was so well known here in Germany, people would call up and say, Paul, can you heal like Dasklos? And I said, no, I can't. Dasklos was an exceptional healer, a wonder healer. And they said, yeah, but can you please try? And because I watched Dasklos heal for 6 years and he became my role model, I said, maybe it's my duty to try, you know. And so people started to come to me in Munich into our apartment. And apparently it helped enough that more and more people came and the word spread. And then I became known as a healer. And then they actually encouraged me to start teaching healing. Back then in 1997, I had no technique because Dasclos had no technique. And what I did was I just through treating different people from different conditions, some of them psychological and some of them physical, uh, I drew on my time with Dasclos, how he treated particular problems with the body, like the knees or the arms or the feet. And then I developed a technique slowly, and that technique became became more and more developed. And over the course of a decade, I developed a 4-day healing education, which turned into a 8-day healing education, and then turned into a 12-day healing education, turned into a 16-day healing education. So there's 4 blocks that I teach. Those are the fundamentals. Now, I want to tell you something about Dascalos, and I also want to tell you something about Jesus of Nazareth, which you might know, and I wouldn't be surprised if you know, but many people don't know. If you came to Cyprus back then to visit Dascalos because of the Magus of Strovolos, or homage to the sun, or fire in the heart, you came there with some preconceptions. You came there with the preconception that Dasclos was known as a magus uh, and a wonder healer. And in a sense, we got from Markides some beautiful glasses to wear through which we could see Dasclos. But glasses are always an issue because they are a filter. And what many people didn't see with Dasclos was a profound Christian mystic. And not only that, they didn't see that Dasclos as a healer was fully passive to the divine will. And the reason why Dasclos was passive to the divine will, because first of all, he was a picture of humility. He had no ego. He was basically in the Christ consciousness more than anybody I've ever met, because he had this perfect balance between love, power, and wisdom at the highest level. But Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, said also, "I'm doing nothing. The source of everything is everything through me." Which means that Jesus of Nazareth himself was totally passive to a higher will. And he didn't do the healings himself, but he allowed the source of everything to do the healings through him. And he was, as far as we know, he was probably one of the most extraordinary healers that ever existed in recent times, in any case, because it was only 2,000 years ago. So even myself, who experienced Dasclos healing over 6 years, uh, didn't really see, or even though Dasclos would say when he laid his hands on somebody, he allowed the archangels to flow over him, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, still I sort of didn't get that message that Dasclos was passive. And when I started healing in Munich and people were coming to me who were suffering, um, I confessed that I had a helper syndrome. And I confess also that I had a lot to do with my early childhood. I come from a big family, and I didn't like that when people are suffering. Uh, but I realized pretty quickly that the more active I was as a healer, in other words, the more involved my ego was, and I use ego in the small term, not the big term, uh, the less place the divine mercy had to flow over me into a client. And I started then to learn that the more passive I was, the more powerful the treatments became. And that was an eye opener to me because as I was going deeper and deeper into the body and deeper into the chakras, and also I was a student of family karma during my time with Dascalos because he taught about family karma. And I was a student of personal karma as well, karmic patterns, uh, and also of collective karma, as it were, which we're now seeing coming to an end because we're going through a massive paradigm shift, a global paradigm shift. Uh, then I realized I taught myself to let go of my desire to help people. And I let go of my desire to be personally involved in the healing process. And I became more and more at home in the passivity. And then a very simple image came to me. What is a healer like Christ? Or what is a healer like Daskalos? What can we compare them to? And also myself to some extent. I'm not at the level of Daskalos, or definitely not of Christ, but I hope to go that way. Is that basically a healer is really comparable to a riverbed. Now, the reason why I use riverbed as opposed to a channel is because a channel is pretty sterile. It's not you get a picture of a channel like a water hose or a tube or something like that. And the reason why I draw on this image of a parable of a riverbed is because it explains everything. And let me explain why. First of all, I'm sure that all of you live near a river. So we have a river flowing here called the Isar. It actually flows through my town here, Starnberg. Part of it does, a tributary does. Now, riverbeds are formed over a long period of time. That means it might snow in the mountains, and when springtime comes along, the snow melts like we have now, and then it flows down from the mountains through the landscape and starts to carve out in the landscape a riverbed through which the water can flow. This is exactly what happens to us when we start saying, okay, I'm going to be a healer and I'm going to dedicate myself to being fully passive and present in the healing process. Then what happens is the divine mercy carves out of us in our faith and our hands in our hearts a riverbed. Okay. Now, the other reason why I draw on the riverbed as a perfect parable for a healer is because when the divine mercy flows over us, we often describe it as mercy, as joy, as love, as trust, as peace, as hope. It's like a pie. You can cut it into 8 pieces, and then you can give it 8 different descriptions of what it is. But in a sense, when it flows over us as a riverbed, we are bathed in it. You know, a riverbed is soaking wet to some degree. Uh, the mercy is not for us, but it does flow over our faith. It flows over our hearts. It flows over our hands or through our hands into a client, which means we are also then bathed in these energies, which is why healing is one of the most meditative things you can involve yourself in. Because, first of all, when you achieve this state of passivity, to receive these eternal strong impulses from the divine feminine and divine masculine from the archangels, uh, you're going to be bathed in this energy, and you're going to be fully relaxed, and it is actually quite incredible. And not only that, you know, when you start healing, first of all, one of the most difficult things for us to let go of, especially if we're born in a Western country, and I think all of us were born in a Western country, we learn pretty quickly that we should be active, you know. For example, when parents have a baby now, often because the mother works and the father works, they put the baby in a nursery, even with 6 months. And then a child, a 6-month-old, is in a room with maybe 20 other kids and with caretakers. And they're separated from their parents, who are the primary caretakers, which I understand has to do with economic reasons. I'm not criticizing it. But right away, a child starts to develop some sort of defense mechanisms because they're surrounded by so many different personalities, even if they're all babies, and then maybe by 2 or 3 caretakers. And it's a lot for a child. It's an awful lot for a child. And they start to develop a very thick skin, as it were. And then as they go to the kindergarten later on and they want to bring their toys to the kindergarten, maybe other children want to play with their toys and they don't want other people to play with their toys. So they start to protect their toys. And then these are really the building blocks, not only of activity, because protecting your toys is very active, protecting yourself is very active, but it's also the building blocks of egoism because you say that's mine, 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 and uh, the only way you can thrive in this world is to become relatively egoistic, to be self-centered. That's a fact. And one of the things that I've been going through, been teaching a lot the last couple of years is, and I've been going through it a lot myself, is the theories of trauma based on the work of Stephen Porges and Gaba Mator and other people. And I've reached a conclusion that nearly all of us are to some extent traumatized. When you're traumatized, some of us are even traumatized in the womb, prenatal trauma. And a lot of us suffered early childhood trauma and then childhood trauma. And we carry that trauma into life and then we traumatize each other. Uh, but there's trauma makes us also very active, okay? Because we want to defend ourselves. We need to have a confirmation that we're good. We need to defend our ego, especially if we get insulted. And so that is also one of the grounds, one of the building blocks of activity. And so when I start teaching somebody to be a healer, and the first thing I say to them is if you want to go in that direction of Christ or Daskalos, then you have to let go of a lot of things. Actually, it's more about de-learning than it is about learning. It really is. And one of the most difficult things to untrain yourself is to be active in the healing process. And another thing about the riverbed parable, which I think is very beautiful, is that a riverbed is a riverbed 24 hours a day, uh, 365 days a year. That means if you're fortunate like me, and I consider myself very fortunate, and I'm not bragging, and you have a lot of clients like I do, and then you're treating people, maybe 4 or 5 people a day, then for these 4 or 5 hours, you are at home in the riverbed modus, and you're at home in the passivity, and you're at home in the peace and the trust and the joy. That's why I describe this talk as one of the most beautiful things to do is to heal, because there's nothing more beautiful for us than to become attuned with the divine streams. You know, when we become attuned and at one with the divine streams, then immediately we're linked to this universal peace and trust and hope and love. And then when you leave this treatment room and you go to the supermarket or you go home and somebody invites you into a conflict, then slowly you have no desire to enter a conflict because you know that you're spending 4 or 5 hours in the peace and the trust. Um, my connection is getting weak. I have to switch to my iPhone. 1 second, please. Just that we don't lose touch with each other here. And then I'm going to continue. Um, share, share. My iPhone is much stronger than my router here. Okay, now we're good. Okay, so uh, this is what I'm saying now is that one of the most beautiful things I think if you think about our ancestors and when we're talking about time immemorial, so we're going back tens of thousands of years, uh, when our ancestors were sitting underneath the stars, not distracted by cell phones or the internet or by politics, um, they were fully attuned with the star systems. They were looking up at the planets and they were looking at the stars and they were very open to perceiving the divinity, really. And I'm sure that one of the first professions that our ancestors involved themselves in is if one of them felt very much attuned to the sources of mercy, they would say, "Can I lay my hands on you to help you get rid of pain and suffering?" Uh, and so I think one of the first professions is spiritual healings of all time. And it's been unfolding in human consciousness. And now, of course, we have a lot of distractions, an awful lot of distractions. especially now in a paradigm shift with the politics being very extreme and also very tragic, like in Palestine, and extremely ludicrous, like in America and in other countries. Then often we're distracted because of the news and because of what's going on. Uh, but there's time for that and there's time for healing. And if you can separate the two, and really, if you learn a technique, I'm not saying my technique, but if you learn a technique where the teacher stresses passivity coupled with a treatment form, and this is very key, a treatment form where you learn to lay your hands on the organs that are suffering more than the other, like the kidneys, like the adrenaline glands, like the spleen, like the liver, like the lower digestive and upper digestive tracts and so forth, solar plexus, and you lay your hands on the chakras for a reason because you know what's there. What's there, you know? So my coffee machine is a little bit. One of the great things that Dostoevsky taught us is that we are largely composed of the past, okay? So he gave us the theory, he didn't invent it, but he gave us the theory of elementals. And elementals are thought forms and emotion thought forms, mostly rooted in the past, mostly rooted in family karma, and mostly rooted in personal karma. And he said something very important. He said these elementals are very much alive within us. And they draw on our energy field. They draw on our prana to recreate themselves, which means to a very large extent, they control what we think and they control what we feel, elementals, especially when they're left unchecked, when they're left unexamined. So what a healer like myself has to have is a method, and I've received so many methods thanks to John the Apostle, who guides me quite nicely. That that you lay your hands on the chakras and the organs which are storing suffering as psychonoetic energy. And then through this method, you're constantly in the passivity. So even though your hands are moving from one point to the other, inside of yourself, you're fully passive. And it's a beautiful combination. It's really a beautiful combination. If somebody saw me healing, they might get the impression that I'm very active. But inside of me, when I'm treating somebody for 50 minutes or an hour, then I'm fully passive. At least I think I am. It's hard to tell how passive you are. So let me uh, add one more thing, which I think is very important to know. Uh, when we enter a paradigm shift like we are, and we're pretty far through a paradigm shift. Tomorrow I fly to Kos, and then I'm going to be on Patmos to teach the Book of Revelation for the 10th year in a row. Uh, and if you know anything about the Book of Revelations, it is a description of a paradigm shift. And so it's getting actually the 7 days that we spend on Patmos are getting more and more intense. Never mind. If you ever have a chance to take part in the seminar, you won't regret it. Um, and it's also a beautiful island. The thing about a paradigm shift is that normally when we're not in a paradigm shift, in other words, the paradigm that we built up still fits and we contribute to it with our thoughts and with our behavior and with our lifestyle, then the sources of mercy go into they go into a mode where they stay back. You know, in other words, they stay back because they want us to have our experiences. But the moment things start to go a little bit south, like they are now, they're pretty extreme right now. And I don't just mean COVID. I don't mean extreme politics. I don't mean just the banking. I don't mean just the wars, which are tragic. These two wars are really, really tragic, and it all has to do about making money and taking land. Because the forces that stand behind the status quo don't want change. That's a fact. They don't want change. They find everything nice. They're earning a lot of money. They're controlling the population. So they become more and more aggressive. And let them become aggressive because they're playing their role. But when we enter a paradigm shift, and suddenly this separation wall between us and the divine mercy becomes more and more translucent. It starts to become thinner and thinner. And the sources of divine mercy, whether it's Christ, whether it's the archangel, whether it's the Holy Spirit as a feminine force, are allowed to flow through a healer, especially if the healer's passive and has a good treatment form, which I teach. I really do teach a good treatment form. Then they're allowed to flow through the healer more and more uh, with greater and greater intensity and actually free the people of karma quicker than before. Why? Because when we leave one paradigm behind, and we're leaving one paradigm behind, and we start going into a new paradigm, then everything that belonged to the old paradigm stays in the old paradigm. The only thing that we bring into the new paradigm from the old paradigm are the qualities that fit the new paradigm, like love, compassion, peace, uh, sympathy, empathy, and so forth and so forth and so forth. Everything else which has to do with conflict and control and divide and rule has to stay in the old paradigm. So there's a deep cleaning going on right now. There's a deep cleaning going on right now on the global level. As we know, the Mother Earth is showing us how much she's suffering. I know that there's one tornado after the other in America, which is not even a tornado season. And they're being plagued by so many tornadoes. And there's also a lot of storms going on and so forth. And this is the Mother Earth telling us that she's not in balance because we've dominated her, we've abused her, which we're allowed to do. Don't feel guilty. I don't feel guilty. It's all part of the experience. And also the animal kingdom, we've totally dominated and used for our own exploitation. And that has to come to an end. It will come to an end because we are going to enter a time of more compassion and more empathy for each other, and that means for all sentient beings everywhere. So it is a wonderful time for spiritual healing right now, a wonderful time for spiritual healing because um, I have a lot of therapists. A lot of them are joining me on Patmos next week, and they're good therapists. They're trained in Freud, they're trained in Jung, they're trained in Adler. But therapy is a slower road. It's just slow. It means once or twice a week for an hour, and it goes very gradually. And I'm not against therapy at all. But the thing about spiritual healing is when it's time to let go of karma, and the healer is passive, like myself or like Daskalos, then the divine mercy can take away karma at an increasing urgency, like we haven't experienced for a long time. And I'm saying that now not as a teacher. I'm saying that as my experience as a healer right now, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm guiding a lot of people through healing right now, especially through the deeper healing, which I teach, which is called the seven treatments, inspired by the Gospel of John, where a client comes to me or to my students seven times. And the advantage is it gives them the mercy time frame to go deeply into the chakras or deeply into the organs for a deep cleaning or healing. So I describe this talk as how beautiful healing is because it's probably one of the most beautiful things you can engage yourself in. It is also one of the most meditative acts you can do because you go into a deep meditation, and it is one of the most powerful ways of. It is by itself a spiritual path. It is really truly a spiritual path because you are bathed every day in the sources of mercy, which is the goal of every spiritual path. I mean, it sounds like I'm bragging. I'm not trying to brag at all. I'm just trying to explain to you my life, and I'm trying to explain to you why Daskalos love to heal so much. Because Daskalos called it co-creation. Healing is co-creation. It's co-creating with the divine. And I know that now, you know. And even though Daskalos was a co-creator with the divine, he himself was passive most of the time. Daskalos had a big heart, a very big heart. And Duskless didn't like to see people suffer. Uh, and sometimes Duskless slipped out of the passivity. How do I know this? Because if somebody came to Duskless with a bad knee, he had a rule actually. He had a rule that he would ask the archangels 3 times to heal. So the first time he would lay his hand on the knees, maybe massage the knees a little bit, and he would call on silently. He would call on the archangels of the element, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, to heal the knee. And if the answer was no, he would ask a second time, and then maybe it would be partially healed. And if the answer was no a second time, he would ask a third time. Okay. And then if the answer was no, sometimes Daskalus would leave the passive state and actually heal the knee with his own vitality. And then the next day he would walk around for a limp with a limp for about 24 hours. And you'd say, Daskalus, I thought you weren't supposed to take anything from a client. He said, yeah, I know I'm not supposed to, but he was suffering so much. What could I do? And I find it so beautiful about Daskalus that he felt so much compassion for all of us that he would actually take our pain for a while, even though he said it was a big mistake, you know. And this is one of the nice things about healing, and also healing through passivity, is that we develop very quickly very strong borders. In other words, what belongs to me, and what belongs to a client belongs to a client. And that means we'll have no desire to take anything from a client because it won't help, because they'll keep it anyway, and then we'll both suffer. So, like I said, if you've learned a healing technique where the technique stresses that you are fully passive, I'll tell you what I do. I'll tell you a secret. What I do, I start every healing at the heels of a client. So my client will lie down. I'll show you my room a little bit, just so you get a look around. It's a bit chaotic. On the table there, uh, and I take their heels, and then I speak to the divine, the archangels and Christ, and the Holy Spirit as the divine feminine, and I say either quietly or I say out loud, um, here is your child. That means the client laying on the table is not my child, which means that client is not my responsibility. And then I continue, I say, here are your hands. I give you my hands, you know, that my hands will be your riverbed. And then I finish by saying, heal, you know. And when I say these 3 things, here's your child, here are your hands, heal, then immediately I start breathing fully, much fuller, and my nervous system becomes fully relaxed, and I'm in the riverbed mode. So that's one technique to do that, but you really need to, the thing is all of us learned for a long time to be active, and to let that go is not that easy, but it's getting easier. All right, I think I said enough about healing. I think I don't think I left anything out. So if you have any questions, and I please ask you to keep the questions on healing, and not open-ended, not about Dasclos too much and stuff like that, but just about healing and illness. Um, then I'm open to hearing your questions, and if I can help you with an answer, then I'd be glad to. Does anybody have a question that they want to ask about Dasclos as a healer, about my technique, or about anything? Your microphones are all off nearly, so you have to make sure you turn your microphone to everyone. What's the third book? The 3 books are Magus Astrovelos, Fire in the Heart, and Homage to the Sun. Those are the 3 books. Some of them you can download for free on the internet. Any questions, please? Don't be shy, and don't feel like your question doesn't, is not important. You can order from the Stoa series if you want, but I think you can get them used easily, and thank God that they're not expensive used. The Stoa series is in the hands of his daughter, Paniota. So if you want to support her, then order directly from the Stoa series. So if there's no questions, then either I was incredibly clear. Uh, sorry, is it possible to heal your own body? Uh,
Yeah.
this is 1 second. So Mara had a question. Is it possible? He's asking questions about self-healing. Uh, I am I teach a lot of self-healing techniques, but it's a misnomer. It's a misnomer to call them self-healing techniques. When you come into contact with the archangels or with Christ or the Holy Spirit and ask them to flow over you, uh, then it is no longer self-healing. And I'll tell you one more thing else, Mara, that Christ said, he said, when two or three are gathered in my name, then I am among them. And that's a divine law. And that means often it is talked about what is the strongest vibration throughout the universe? Okay. So the mystics would say, is it power? Is it wisdom? Or is it love? And this sounds a bit kitschy, but I've come to believe that the strongest power that flows through all of creation is love. And when not me, but when a healer is fully passive to mercy, which is love, by the way. I mean, if there's another word for mercy, it's love. And then you are a client, then the three of you are coming, the three of you, you and me, and the sources of mercy are coming together to do a very strong healing. So to answer your question, I'm not against healing your own body, but I know that divine healing magnifies the healing process as opposed to sitting at home. And I'm not against this, don't get me wrong. I'm not against this, sitting at home and meditating and calling on the archangels to heal you. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of you have healers around you. I do an awful lot of distant healing, an awful lot of distant healing on people all over the world because I learned distant healing from Daskalos. But if you have healers around you, then go to them. But really ask yourself, you can tell if a healer is at home in a passivity because if a healer is a little bit insecure, and I understand that, I was very insecure, uh, or needs some sort of confirmation from the healing process, they need to be told they've done that well, uh, or they're suffering from too little self-worth, insecurity, then there's a danger that they're not going to be fully passive. That's why I said, when you're beginning as a riverbed, sometimes you're a little bit small, you're not that deep, and you're not that empty because maybe insecurity is there, maybe too little self-worth is there, to maybe you need a confirmation. But if you stick with it, then slowly you become as a riverbed, you become wider and wider and wider and deeper and deeper and deeper and emptier and emptier and emptier. Yeah. Somebody else had a question? There's 7 remarks now in the chat. Um, oh, thank you, Alex. Yeah, this is also the thing about a healer. For example, Daskalos' stroke. Some people felt that Daskalos had the stroke because he took on the karma from other people. That's nonsense. Daskalos would never do that. I'll tell you why Daskalos had the stroke is because Daskalos felt very much like the body was too small and too limited. And when I got to Cyprus in 1989, Daskalos would often talk publicly in the Stoa and say that the body is a prison because he experienced the body as a prison because he was so much at home in Christ and in the spirit. And the spirit is formless. Um, and he kept saying that. And then, I started to get to know people who were coming from Austria, from Switzerland, from America, from Germany. And a lot of them said, wow, that's really great. Daskalos is saying the body's a prison. That's exactly the way I experience the body myself. And so I got my courage up and I went to Daskalos. It was after I've only been there like 2 months. And I said, Daskali, I need to talk with you. And he said, what? Because it was really the first time I asked Osculus anything. I was shy. I'm still shy. And I said, Doskly, it's really beautiful, everything you're teaching, and people are really enjoying it. But I've talked to a few people here, and some of them have told me that they've even had thoughts of suicide. And you're a great role model for them. And when you, as a role model, as somebody in the Christ consciousness, confirm something like the body's a prison, maybe they go home less at home in the body as when they arrived on the island. And he looked at me and said, "You're right, Paul. We will never teach that again." So the next day in the Stoa, the next day, Dasclus was sitting in his chair, and I sat to his left side because I was his bodyguard. I made sure he had water, and I felt very protective of him because I was young and strong. I tell you, I have this picture here of Dasclus and myself. You can see how young and dumb and strong I was compared to Dasclus. You know, typical American, except I had Birkenstocks on. It doesn't matter. Um, and then the next day, we were down in the Stoa, and he was giving a talk, and he was about to say that the body is a prison, and he turned to me, went like this, turned to the people, and said to the people, "I'm not allowed to teach that anymore." So he made me feel guilty. That wasn't the only time he made me feel guilty. And he said, "I'm not allowed to teach that anymore. The body is a gift." And then literally 4 years later, on June 26th, he was visited by a stroke. And I say visited because he didn't suffer it. He received it because it was his last initiation. It was Dasclos's last initiation. And I saw this every day because he fought against the stroke and then he surrendered to the stroke. He surrendered fully to the stroke. And which means he surrendered to the fact that the body is a gift from God, and it is. And he surrendered to the fact that this world is not a prison, and he made peace with the divine feminine through the stroke. And it took 14 months before he could move on. And that's the story. A lot of people don't believe that, but especially people who are following his daughter and stuff. But I can tell you that I experienced exactly the moment where he surrendered to the stroke and he started laughing again. So healers actually should be more healthy than non-healers. And the reason is simple. If you're treating people sometimes 4 or 5 a day and are 4 or 5 hours a day in the full passivity, then there's no reason why you should be ill. And the opposite, you should be fully healthy. Knock on wood. Sure, we have pain, but that's a very dangerous romantic notion that a healer should suffer. Very, very romantic and very dangerous. And Duskless would have no patience for that. Duskless would have no patience for that because he saw healing as one of the greatest of serving the divine. And let me say something about spirituality. Now I'm going to give you a sermon. A lot of us meditate and a lot of us read spiritual books. Okay, a lot of us do. And spirituality is very important, but when you're also wisdom teachings are very important, without a doubt. But when we're entering a paradigm shift and we're deeply into a paradigm shift, then spirituality has to become very practical. It can no longer be passive or selfish. It has to become practical. And healing is one of the most beautiful ways to practice spirituality. It really is because you bring it into the consciousness and you bring it into the bodies of the people who come to you. That's my deep, deep experience and my deep, deep feeling. Yeah. To your question, Alex, one of the most important things that a healer needs to become aware of uh, is uh, if he or she was traumatized, they need to look at that. Okay? They really do. And I'll be on the island of Patmos next week, and I'll be celebrating my 64th birthday on the island of Patmos. Not a bad place to turn 64. And it wasn't until about 4 years ago that I woke up to how traumatized I was. I have no problem admitting that. And I suffered a lot of trauma, also prenatal trauma and early childhood trauma, because my parents were both traumatized. And the nice thing about being traumatized is you build up a survival mechanism. And the survival mechanism, thank you. The survive, not yet, not yet. You don't say that in Germany until your birthday. You can,
Oh, okay.
it brings you bad luck in Germany.
Oh,
Uh, um, the, the thing is that when you're traumatized and you've been riding a survival mechanism, you can be thankful for that, but you have to make your survival mechanism conscious. It can't remain unconscious, okay? Which means all of us have to look into the fact, were we traumatized? Were we traumatized in the womb? Were we traumatized then as early as children? And I think all of us were to some extent or the other. And when you look at that, it's almost the duty of every healer to do that because when you look at how much you're traumatized and you make it conscious through realization, then you become, in that moment, you become a deeper, wider riverbed. uh, because your motivations are now cleaned up. Your motivations have become conscious. And I can tell you, since I've become aware of my trauma and have now let go of it, and I have peace with it. In fact, I have gratitude for it. I have deep gratitude for it. And I know that I had a survival mechanism. Uh, I don't need my survival mechanism anymore. You know, this is the path. This is the path of a healer, to look at that and to overcome that. Yeah. Any other question? I know I've touched on a lot of things, but any other questions? I've talked about a lot of things. You're welcome to ask any questions about that. I mean, there's a whole lot of people who are doing fantastic work on trauma in the last 20 years, including Stephen Porges. He was one of the founders of it. His work on the polyvagal nerve is groundbreaking for healers and for therapists. Stephen Porges, and he was followed by Gabor Mator. I'm sure Mata, and I think you know about him and Deb Davis. And so there's a lot of excellent work on trauma, really excellent. And really, the nice thing about all the people who are working with trauma, they were all traumatized themselves. So they stand with us and not above us. Often a therapist or a spiritual teacher stand above us, and they want us to stand below us, and that's a game. It's a game. It's a game that Duskless had no patience for. Trauma and karma are very much mixed. There was never a time we weren't traumatized. There was never a time that we were not traumatized because either we were traumatized because of natural catastrophes, or we were traumatized throughout history because another tribe attacked our tribe. We were traumatized because a virus visited us and decimated our population, like the Black Death or the plague. So there are times where there's relative peace and harmony, and we can enjoy that. But then, without a doubt, comes a new wave of trauma. I don't know if any of you have heard of Gopekli Tepe. I'm going to explain to you quickly Gopekli Tepe. Gopekli Tepe is a temple complex in southeast Turkey, not far from the Syrian border. And it was discovered about 26 years ago by a German archaeologist, Klaus Schmidt, who unfortunately died. And he started digging out these temple complexes, and they're all at least 12,000 years old. 12,000 years old. That means they're twice as old as the pyramids. They're three times as old as Stonehenge. They're easily twice as old as any other temple complex in the world. And they're also massive. They cover 10 hectares. And there are 13 of them. There are 13 of them. I lead tours there, and I'm going to lead a tour there in October. It's one of the most mind-blowing things there is there because when you go there, you have no idea who built them, how they built them, and why they built them because there's no written record of who did that. And I use that, Alex, because I use that as an example because they built that, and then I don't know if you know about the small Dryas period, the Ice Age. Well, the ice age came and it decimated the landscape, including Göbekli Tepe and all these other tepes. So we build things and then they're destroyed, and that's the way it is. Nothing, everything's imperishable, as we know. Everything's imperishable except the soul and the spirit. The soul and the spirit are eternal. That's why Christ said, don't store your treasures on earth. Store your treasures here. Uh, Christ was an amazing teacher. Dasklos also. I often say Dasklos' birthday was 12, 12, 12, 12. It really
Mhm.
was 12, 12, 12, 12 o'clock. And my birthday is 6, 1961, 6 in the morning. So I say I'm a half of Daskalos. And a half of Daskalos is better than no Daskalos at all. So any other questions before I stop rambling? You're awfully quiet. I mean, you write things here, but you don't, nobody wants to ask a direct question. I'll take that as a compliment. I'd like to do a meditation with you. Do you need to take a short break to go to the bathroom or anything like that? Does anybody need to take a short break? Just tell me yeah or no, because the
Oh,
meditation is going to be about a half an hour at least. Does anybody need a break?
no.
Yeah? Okay, we'll take a 5 minute break and then we'll get back together in 5 minutes, okay? Is that good? 5 minutes enough?
Yep.
Okay, 5 minute break. And I'll turn off my coffee machine. Yes, Mara, yes. And so is John. and they're here now as well. Okay, I've muted you all that there's no background sound, that nobody's disturbed by any background sound. Okay, so you're all on mute right now. And now I'm going to begin. So wherever you are, in whatever country you are, wherever you're sitting or lying, and you can lay for this meditation, beneath you um, is the Mother Earth. The Mother Earth belongs to the creative powers uh, that are rooted in the divine feminine. Okay. And the Mother Earth is very much intelligent and a living organism. And inasmuch as the Mother Earth belongs to the divine feminine, it is filled with all the energy that the divine feminine has, including original peace, original trust, original love, original hope, and original joy, life joy. Now we ask the Mother Earth now to flow into the soles of our feet and start to bathe us in these energies. And she does that for us. She responds to that. We feel this energy coming into the soles of the feet, going through the ankles, up through the thigh, the calves, bathing the calves in joy, peace, trust, and love. Flows through the knees and gently into the thighs, the upper thighs. That the legs are fully bathed in joy, peace, love, trust, and hope. And then it flows into the root chakra and into the reproductive organs. If we have any pain in the root chakra, any emotions like fear or trauma, and if any of this trauma is also stored within the reproductive organs, feel how not only the root chakra, but the reproduction organs are bathed now in mercy, thanks to the Mother Earth, in love, in trust, in hope, in peace, and in joy. Feel that energy moving into the solar plexus and into the abdomen. It floods the solar plexus. And from the solar plexus, the kidneys are bathed in the joy, peace, love, and trust. And the adrenal glands and the pancreas, one after the other, including the spleen, the liver, the gallbladder, the lower abdomen and upper abdomen. The entire abdomen is full now, thanks to the Mother Earth alone, in joy, peace, love, and trust. And now feel how these energies start moving up into the lungs. And if the lungs are somehow beset with some old fear coupled with sadness or life fatigue, pressing on the lungs and pressing on the heart, the organ and the chakra, pressing on the thymus gland and the thyroid gland. Feel how this whole abdomen now is bathed, thanks to the Mother Earth, in the original joy, original trust, original mercy, peace, and hope. And then this energy starts flowing up into the throat chakra. And the throat chakra, in this time of great turmoil and paradigm shift, is really lost because the throat chakra, both in the east and west, wants to control everything. And we see there's nothing to control when everything's out of control and still in control. That's the paradox. That's the paradox of a paradigm shift. Everything's out of control and at the same time in control. So feel how your throat chakras are now bathed in trust, in original trust, hope, joy, love, and mercy. And that relaxes not only the throat, but it also relaxes the lower jaw. Because so many people these days are grinding their teeth, and I know why. I feel now how the lower jaw is completely relaxed, thanks to the Mother Earth alone, and hangs there completely comfortable and powerful. And feel how this energy flows into the mouth, into the gums, and up into the nose and into the sinuses. That the sinuses are visited by mercy. And it flows into the brain then and into the amygdala, where the fear patterns are often stored, and into the thalamus, which controls our sleep cycles, and also into polyvagal nerve here, and into the hypothalamus, and into the third eye, and into the prefrontal cortex here. That the eyes and the ears are also bathed, thanks to Mother Earth, in mercy. And gradually, the two hemispheres of the brain, the left and right hemisphere of the brain, are fully bathed in balance, in harmony, and are allowed to come together now in a much needed exchange with one another and live harmony. And now, in this beautiful state, I want you to come into your solar plexus now. And I want you to see in the middle of your solar plexus a small ball of energy radiating the sky blue color, the beautiful sky blue color that we have here in Bavaria. But this is more than a color. This is the energy of the Archangel Gabriel. And Gabriel is the archangel over the water. He takes care of the water element. And our bodies are at least 75% water, as is the emotional body. Now, I want you to ask this ball of energy to start to expand. And you could do that by breathing in prana and bringing that into the ball of energy. And when it frees any disturbance with your out breath, let that go. Breathe in life, breathe in prana, let go of suffering and pain. This helps Gabriel. Breathe out agony, breathe in life and health. And you see that the sky blue ball of energy starts to expand and cover the solar plexus, engulfing also the pancreas, the kidneys, the adrenal glands, slowly the spleen, the upper abdomen. The liver is then bathed now in this energy from Gabriel. The pancreas is, the gallbladder is, the lower abdomen is, and also the reproductive organs are. While this ball of energy starts to become so big that the upper part comes into contact with your diaphragm here, and the lower part comes into full contact with your root chakra below. That around you, you have a huge ball of Gabriel's energy, allowing Gabriel to clean the water in your body, to clean the lymph fluid in your body, to clean the organs in your body, which are mostly made up of water, by the way. And allow this healing to go into the emotional level, that all the elementals in you built of water, like shame, sadness, fear, are also then transformed thanks to the Archangel Gabriel. You can feel that now. This is how quickly healing goes. This is not self-healing. This is healing with the archangels and with the Christ and with the Holy Spirit. Now leave that sky blue ball on your abdomen in full contact with the root chakra, and in that is the sacral chakra and the solar plexus, and in full contact with your diaphragm. Leave that there. Gabriel, Gabriel cleans even more. But now come into the center of your heart, and there you see a beautiful white candle burning with a golden flame. And around this golden flame is a halo of rosy light, beautiful rosy light, which is the color of love. Now that flame should burn perfectly bright and still. It shouldn't move at all like in a light wind. If it's moving in a light wind, there's a disturbance in your heart, not surprising. Now use your in-breath now to bring prana into your heart and into your lungs, and use your out-breath to get rid of this disturbance until that candle flame is perfectly still and luminous. It may take a few seconds, but the mercy will help you. And after it's luminous and still, see that this halo around the golden flame begins to expand, and the rosy light starts to grow and create a rosy globe of energy that bathe your lungs, your thymus gland, your heart chakra, and your thyroid gland in the absolute love, supported by the Christ energy in the golden flame. But this is the love that we need so badly for our lungs and for ourselves. It is both personal and impersonal. and it cleans the lung and the hearts of pain and suffering. It cleans the lungs of fear, of sadness and life fatigue, and fills us with love and creates in the heart center a temple of love. This rosy this rosy ball of energy comes in full contact with the throat chakra and comes into contact with the upper end of the sky blue light below, that they start to mix a little bit, the sky blue ball of energy and the rosy energy. And now, can you imagine now in these two suns, you have your throat chakra, heart chakra, solar plexus, sacral chakra, and root chakra. The healing is immense right now. It is physical healing coupled with emotional healing, coupled with spiritual awakening. Now leave these two beautiful balls of energy, globes of energy around you. And now come up into your head, your brain. And now see in the old center of your brain a golden kugel, a golden ball of energy the size of a marble. It's a point at the beginning. It's golden yellow. That is the Christ energy again, the same energy that was in the candle flame or is in the candle flame. And now you're breathing in and you're seeing that this golden ball of energy in your brain starts to expand and bathe one after the other all the parts of your brain in the Christ energy. That means the amygdala, where you have so many fear patterns built up by trauma, is now bathed in the Christ energy. If you feel a little dizziness or pressure, this is healthy, okay? Really, if you feel any dizziness now, just bear with it. This is healing. And feel how your thalamus is now bathed in the Christ energy. And your hypothalamus and your polyvagal nerve and all the glands, including the cerebral gland, the third eye. It, the third eye is bathed in the Christ energy. The prefrontal cortex is bathed in the Christ energy. And the two hemispheres of the brain are fully bathed in the Christ energy. As this globe of energy filled with the Christ energy creates a ball of energy around the head, where the upper part comes into contact with your crown chakra, and the lower part meets the top of the rosy energy on your throat chakra. And now you have these unbelievably powerful balls of energy filled with the Christ energy around your head, the love on your heart, and Gabriel around your solar plexus. And all seven primary chakras and all the secondary chakras are within these balls of energy, allowing a deep and lasting healing. A deep and lasting healing on all levels: physical, emotional, mental, and even spiritual. You can feel it throughout your hands. You can feel it throughout your feet. We're still in contact with the Mother Earth and the joy that she has for us, that we experience directly her source, the creative forces. And Dasclus used to teach those many years ago that when you sit down once a day or twice a week and allow these three balls to be recreated around you with the help of Gabriel, with the help of the universal love, and with the help of the Christ, then they'll stay with you throughout the day. And they'll become stronger and stronger and stronger and protect you from everything, from illness, from confusion, from people attacking you. You will become a font of peace, which spreads out through your community. You'll become a role model for the people around you, free of fear, free of anxiety, free of confusion. You'll become a lighthouse. This is what people need around us. They need to know that everything's okay because everything is okay. And if you ever fall out of faith for a while, I understand, then sit down and read Matthew 5:5, the Sermon on the Mount, and read the Beatitudes from Christ, the eight Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the peace. Blessed are those who are pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are those who thirst and hunger after righteousness, for they shall have their fill. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. That's the new paradigm. Those are the building stones of the new paradigm. And it's beautiful because it's all about you as a soul. And we're going to leave conflict behind us. And we're going to come into a deep state of reconciliation with ourselves, a deep state of reconciliation with each other, with the natural world, and with the animal kingdom. Thank you for taking the time, for joining me. I wish you all a beautiful Pentecost. And don't forget that Pentecost means an inflowing of the Divine Mother. That celebrates the time when Jesus received the dove, and it was the Divine Mother. So allow the Divine Mother to bless you with the absolute power, wisdom, and love over the next 2 weeks, and she'll do that for you. Take care, everybody. Stay in peace, stay in trust, stay in hope, and stay in love.
Thanks, Paul.